It's time for amazing relationships. People say that relationships are hard, but what if they could be easy? I believe they can be if you learn how to make relationships easy. Relationships are a skill that anyone can learn, but most people don't have any training at all. I'd like to share with you in this video series how to have an amazing relationship with anybody. And it's going to come down to the number one and only real rule in relationships. I'll reveal that to you in this video. I'm also going to share with you in the series of videos how to create incredible intimacy with anyone. I'm not just talking about sexual intimacy, I mean a real deep connection with people. You're going to learn what happens when you transform your relationship with someone. There's 3 possible outcomes that are mind-blowing, and I can't wait to share them with you. And then I'm also going to share with you the 4 tools of personal transformation that can cause a permanent change in you and in your relationships with other people. I can't wait to share with you. Before we get started, I hope you don't mind if I tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to be one of the top 1% of speakers in the world and a relationship expert. Both my parents are deaf, so that means they can't hear, but I speak fluent sign language. And they had a terrible drug addiction, and that caused me to be exposed to a huge amount of verbal violence, physical violence, chaos, drama, trauma. It was terrible. And as a result, I lived in a world with constant anger and frustration and fear and sadness, and no really powerful relationship advice or guidance or mentoring, not from my family intimately. And so I had to then realize for myself that I was very broken down, and I needed to learn how to fix myself. I needed to learn how to become someone who could have amazing relationships. So I made it a self-study, and I took tons of courses and read tons of books, and I began to recognize that with the 4 tools of transformation that I know, I could literally create these incredible relationships with people. And I remember telling someone from my family, I haven't had a single argument or raised my voice to anyone in years, and no one has raised their voice to me. I literally have peace and harmony in all of my relationships, and it's been that way for a very long time. And he said, I wish I could have that for just one day. I know that I have lots of college and all that sort of training, but I don't think any amount of PhDs is a real qualification. I think the real qualification is real life results. And in my seminars with thousands of students, I've seen people transform their relationships in ways that are unimaginable. So not only did I do it for myself, but I've been successful at teaching other people for years and years and years how to do it, and I've really mastered the process. And I want to share it all with you in this video series, at least the basic fundamentals, because we're not going to spend a whole month in training. But let me give you the fundamentals in this very expansive series, A Course in Relationships, an introduction to it. Let's get into the first and most powerful piece of how to have an amazing relationship. There's one rule of relationships. What is the rule? People don't know. The rule is, nobody can make me feel anything. I'm responsible for all of my own feelings. Nobody can make me feel anything. I'm responsible for all of my own feelings. Now, what that means is that when someone does something, we tend to think, they did this and that, that's why I feel this way. But it's reversing it to say, oh, they did this and that, and they're triggering my emotions that were already there inside of me from before. And all they're doing is bringing it up to the surface for me to work on. That is a completely different perspective. It changes relationships from being a battle, perhaps, or you being a victim to other people's behavior, to you being a powerful person who is growing as a being as a result of other people mirroring to you what there is for you to work on within yourself. It can be difficult to swallow, but don't think of it as being responsible means you're to blame. That's not what it means. It means you're powerful. You're not a victim. You're response-able. You're able to respond. So if somebody else is grumpy and that makes you sad, you might say, oh, you made me sad because you're grumpy. But in reality, they're just grumpy. Your response is your response. And it doesn't really have anything to do with them except that they are pushing your button. And that's your button, not their button. So what we tend to do in our culture in the year 2019 is point a finger at the other person and say, you made me feel this way. But remember, when you're pointing a finger, there's 3 more fingers pointing back at you. And so what it's showing you is something for you to work on within yourself. If you think about let's say an incident happens in a public place, like a fire or a robbery. If you were to interview 20 people who witnessed it, you would get 20 different variations of what happened. Why does that happen? Have you ever thought about that? It's because everyone is seeing life through their own perspective and all their own filters. The reason why science requires double-blind studies on anything they want to prove is because human beings don't see things exactly as they are. They don't see reality exactly as it is. A scientist will automatically, without trying to, project his or her views and beliefs onto reality. And so the only way you can know if something is actually real outside of each individual human's perspective is to do double-blind studies where nobody has any of their subtext or subconscious thoughts interfering with what they're seeing. So when you apply that to relationships, what it means is that however someone acts, you're going to see it through your filters. You're going to see it through your past experiences, your belief patterns. And a lot of those belief patterns that you have aren't even yours. They were installed and programmed into you when you were a child by your environment, even from before. You've got, like, for example, you could inherit belief patterns. And so these thoughts and feelings that you have distort reality, and then you have your response. So what's powerful is to recognize, this is my response. I'm responding this way because of what's inside of me. Everyone has a different response to every situation. How you respond says a lot about who you are. And if you can work on your response and think about making yourself a relationship master, then your responses will be incredible. Then you'll respond to situations differently. Then people will look to you and say, wow, how'd you get to be so amazing? Because you're coming from that one place of no one can make me feel anything. There was a Vietnam veteran who was captured. He became a prisoner of war, a POW. And he said in his book that he was living inside of a hole in the ground with a cage or, a prison bars basically on top of him. And that he couldn't move or do anything. And they abused him and abused him. And then many of the other POWs went crazy, but he didn't. And he revealed the secret of why he didn't go crazy as a prisoner of war. He said, I realized that nobody could make me think anything, that I was in charge of my thoughts. So no matter how they acted, my thoughts were mine. I could choose positive ones. I could choose good ones, ones that made me feel good. And therefore I was okay. Other people lost it because they couldn't maintain a positive perspective. We know biologically that every single thought creates chemicals in your brain, biochemicals, living chemicals, that we call emotion. That's how you feel feelings. Every thought creates feelings. It's a fact. It's an anatomical fact of the human body. Every time you think a thought, it makes you feel something. And nobody can control what you think, and therefore no one can control what you feel. We think that there are automatic natural responses to certain things, but that's not true either. Human beings across different cultures have completely different responses to things that in one culture everyone responds a certain way, so they think, well, that's just how you respond. But in another culture you have a totally different response. For example, in the American culture, when someone dies, we think that you're supposed to be sad. That's the normal human response. Although people have been changing it and throwing celebration parties when people die to celebrate their life, because they've started to say, we don't have to be sad when they're gone. We can be happy for them that they've moved on to a better place. Now there's other cultures where they cry when people are born because they believe that being in the body is suffering, and so they mourn the birthing. Oh, it's so sad that you're born in the body, poor you. And then when they die, they celebrate like crazy because they're finally free. It's actually the reverse of the American culture, isn't it? Well, which one is right? So you, as a relationship master, can choose which response you want. But it does take work. You've got to work on yourself. And now you have to understand, most of the work that's out there in the world is temporary, which might be very deflating. What's the point of working on myself because those issues always come back? That's a waste of your time. The only kind of work you should ever do is when you remove an old issue, old baggage, an old button, that it's permanent. If it's not permanent, you're just really mostly wasting your time. And there are permanent methods out there. I'm going to tell you about 4 of them, the only 4 I know that are really fantastic that I would ever recommend, in the last video in the series. So make sure you go through the whole series to learn about them. If you work on yourself in a permanent way, you'll see yourself responding differently to situations. And that's where it's so powerful for you to follow that number one rule. No one can make me feel anything. I am responsible for all my feelings. No one can cause me to feel anything. No one can push my button if I don't have a button there. It's my button. And what this leads us to is that most of the feelings that we have inside of us actually come from the past. And someone else or something else triggers our stuff to come up to the surface. And you know what I'm talking about. You've said something to someone and they got really, really angry, way more pissed off than they should have been for what you said. And you realize, oh, they just have a trigger there. They're just really sensitive on that subject. Well, why? Because they have past experiences that have built up inside of them that cause them to have all those emotions. And you know not to step on those landmines, because if you do, they'll blow up. You'll trigger their stuff. Well, don't you have stuff as well? It's really easy to find it and to prove that you have your own relationship things to work on. Think about your biggest problem in relationships right now. Think about someone in your life that really triggers you. You got it in your mind? Okay. Now think about the thing that they do that really upsets you, frustrates you, makes you afraid, saddens you, makes you angry, okay, annoys you. Think about that thing. Think about it happening. Now take your attention and go into your body. How does it feel in your body when you think about it? Okay, you feel the emotion, right? Where in your body do you feel it? Find it. Maybe it's in your heart. Maybe it's in your gut. Maybe it's down in your toe. It could be in your head. Wherever it is, find it. Now, if it had a size and a shape, what would the size and shape be? What you have discovered is some of your stuff, one of your buttons that experience is triggering in you. You notice it's actually stored in your body somewhere? It's there. It's been there for a long time. If you ask yourself the question, how long have I felt this way, or when was the first time I felt this way, you'll see many iterations in your life where that emotion came up and came up and came up by different circumstances. And maybe up until now, you thought that those circumstances made you feel that way, but that was actually there all along. You might be thinking, I already know this stuff. This is basics. Well, of course it is. This is the first video in the series. I have to go through the basics. But you probably know that there's a lot of us who've never heard this before. Now, this is a big revelation to consider that feeling I just found has been there all along. And that other people are just pushing it and triggering it to come out. And that it wasn't actually them at all. That feeling was your feeling to begin with. And it needs to get released. And that's what's so beautiful about taking responsibility, is then you can start thinking about, how can I release this forever so that I can be amazing in all of my relationships? So I want to share with you something that happened to me that demonstrated this experience and this power of being responsible for your own feelings. I had a family reunion with my incredible family. They're wonderful people. And my grandma, who I consider the queen button pusher, at least she was while she was alive, she really pushed my buttons. And I got very upset, very angry, very frustrated, very enraged actually at her. And I decided, okay, driving home, I've got to be responsible for how I feel. It's not her, it's me. This is my anger, she's just triggering my button. And really, as I started clearing it out, I realized I had many buttons, and she was pushing a lot of them at once. And so I was removing all these buttons, and I thought, okay, I can't think of anything else that she said that upset me. Literally, I thought I had cleared them all out. And then I talked to her on the phone, and she said, Arnoux, I wish you'd get your life together. And I got upset, and I realized I hadn't cleared all of the buttons. There was still one left, and I think there must have been 20 to begin with. But the other 19 were gone. And so I said, okay, I got to clear this last button. So I worked on that. It only took a few minutes. And I thought, okay, I'm pretty sure I cleared the last button. I don't think there's anything left now. So then I had an hour call with her, and for a whole hour, all I felt was how much she loved me and how much she believed in me. And when she said, I wish you'd get your life together, I didn't even notice until I was sharing with someone about how for the first time in my life, I had a call with my grandma and I didn't get triggered at all. And I had literally cleared all of the buttons. Then I went to Chicago and spent 5 days with her. We went to the Blue Man Group, we went to the Phantom of the Opera, we went to the park, and we had a great time together. And I had a chance to tell her about what I do and what my dream is. This was way back in the beginning when I was first starting out as a professional speaker and author. And she finally got me. And she said, wow, everyone needs to know this information. And I said, I know. That's why I'm going to dedicate my life to this and not go be a doctor or a lawyer or a stockbroker and all the other things I could do. I want to do this because I know I can help people more with this than anything else I could ever imagine. and she became one of my biggest supporters. And it was because I could let her in. But I could never let her in before because of all those buttons I had that were not actually because of her. When she was being critical, what she was actually doing was trying to love me. That was just her way. But I didn't get it. All I heard was the criticism, and I got triggered. And once I cleared out all the triggers, I was able to hear her just fine. I know you're wondering, how did you do that? How did you clear the buttons permanently? There's a process called the 7 steps to reprogramming yourself. I'll tell you more about it later in the series. Just hold on to your hats. I'm gonna get to that. But it is amazing, and it is scientifically proven to work. And in fact, it's the fastest method in the history of mankind. So I'll be really excited to tell you more about that later. I want to share one more thing with you in this video before we go on to the second video. And it's because it's crucial to help you understand the #1 rule. I saw Marianne Williamson, one of the greatest speakers, give a presentation on relationships. And at the end, I told my friends, I said, did you hear that? That's literally my class. She literally gave my class, Amazing Relationships. But she added some stuff to it. And they said, really? That's your class? I said, haven't you heard my class? There's only one thing to teach about amazing relationships. And she taught the same one thing for 90 minutes. You're responsible for all of your feelings. Everyone else is just showing you what to work on. And she gave an analogy that I want to borrow from her. She said that back in the day when Michelangelo was commissioned to carve the statue of David, he sat in front of this giant piece of stone for months. And people came by and said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm working. And he just kept saying that, what are you doing? I'm working. And then finally one day, he got out his tools and he started chipping away all of the stone until it was gone, and what was left was the statue of David. And people said, Michelangelo, how did you create the statue of David? That's amazing. And he said, I didn't create the statue of David. God created the statue of David. Or you could say the universe if you want, the great divine, the great spirit, doesn't matter. But this is what he said. God created the statue of David. I just took everything that wasn't him off. See, I believe that you're a divine being. And that your anger, your fear, your frustration, your sadness, and all those other negative emotions that you have from your past are not really who you are. That they masquerade as who you are. And that the process of removing them permanently is the same as you removing the stones off of your divine being. And the tools for how to do that are coming as we go along. But that's the idea, is that if you hold on to the fact that no one can make you feel anything, then you can begin to find where you can transform yourself and become your most amazing you. So, go ahead and get started on the next video. I'll see you then.